Ladies and gentlemen, as we begin our services today, we ask that you kindly turn off all cell phones or electronic devices or place them on silent. Thank you.
Welcome, everyone. Today, we gather to honor a loving husband, father, pop, grandpop, son, uncle, star softball pitcher, union leader, and so much more. Herb Diamond was a man committed to his family, his work, his garden elves, and especially his beloved wife, Mary, of blessed memory. Now, I didn't know him in life, but I had the opportunity to spend some time with some members of the family who shared with me the weight of this loss for them and shared with me some of who, for them, Herb was. So Herb, if your soul is listening, we're going to offer some words about you to raise up the man that you were and to provide honor to you during this memorial. And from what I've learned, your response to that might be, sounds like a plan. I learned how well he took care of Mary in the years before her passing. I heard of her stroke and how he stood by her, taking care of all of her needs with love for the 7 years between her stroke and her passing. I heard that his inability to cook was surpassed only by his love of eating. I learned that he had a strong personality when he had to, taking great care to teach his children appropriate respect. He and Mary prioritized having family dinner. And with the number of kids they shared, that was no small task, I imagine. I heard about the care he put into his yard and the things he would tinker with in his workshop. But most of all, I heard about the care that he had for his family. And together, today, you all gather in his memory, and you'll hear from members of the family to offer words and prayers and final dedications as we together, as a sacred community this morning, begin to frame out what will shape his lasting legacy. He's bound to the bond of life in the Jewish tradition, and that means to each of you, and when you carry forward his best attributes, he lives on and his presence remains bound in this world. He is predeceased, as I mentioned, by his late wife, Mary, and the late John Smith, and his late siblings. He's survived by his children, Susan with Greg, Mary with Pat, Bernadette with Bob, Charles with Diane, Ron with Denise, and Bob with Sharon. He's also loved and will be missed by his many grandchildren, great-grandchildren, one great-great-grandchild, nieces and nephews. And I have to ask, is that the great-great-grandchild? No, okay, I didn't know. Okay, right. God willing, may your love for one another carry you through this difficult transition. Our Jewish tradition teaches that while the physical body is temporary, the soul is eternal. And today, as we lay his body to rest, we pray for the continued elevation of his soul. May our time together today have purpose, may it hold deep meaning, and may it honor Herbert Diamond's memory well. Heschel ben Yosef. My name's Rabbi Nathan Weiner. I'm a rabbi locally here in South Jersey at Congregation Beth Tikva in Morrilton, and it is an honor to be present with each of you today. We have two mitzvot, two commandments in the Jewish tradition before us today. The first is called Kavod Hamet, honoring the deceased, and as we share words and prayers this morning through to interment, that's where our focus will be. Following interment, we shift our intentions to form a community of consolation, performing the mitzvah of Nichum Avelim, of comforting the mourners, as they enter their new status in the Jewish tradition as mourners. But noting the various faith traditions represented in the family and in this room, I'm going to recite Psalm 23. It's customary at a Jewish funeral to read from Tehillim, from Psalms. And Psalm 23 is a psalm universal across the Abrahamic faith traditions at moments of loss and grief. I'll read it first in the Hebrew, followed by a standard English translation. If you're familiar with it, I invite you to say it with me. Mizmor leDavid, Adonai ro'i lo achsar binotesha yarbitzeni al mei menuchot yinahaleni. Nafshi yeshovev yancheni b'maglei tzedek leman shemo. Gam ki elech b'getz al mavet lo irara ki ata imadi. Shivtecha u'mishantecha hema yenachamuni. Ta'aroch lefanai shulchan neged sorarai, dishanta v'shemen roshi kosi rivaya. Ach tov v'chesed yirdefuni kol yemei chayai, v'shavti b'veit Adonai le'orech yamim. A psalm of David. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He guideth me in straight paths for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Amen. Amen. From Kohelet, Ecclesiastes, for everything there is a season, a time for every experience under heaven. A time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to uproot that which has been planted, a time to tear down and a time to build, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to grieve and a time to dance, a time to throw stones and a time to gather stones up, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to seek and a time to lose, a time to keep, a time to discard, a time to tear, and a time to sow, a time for silence, and a time for speaking. Now is one of those times for speaking. And we're going to hear from some members of the family to offer words of a hesped, of a eulogy to uphold Herb's kavod, his honor. You're going to hear from Mike, from Bob, and then from Greg and Joey. Mike?
I met my Uncle Herb March 9th, 1951. I was 6 days old. He was 18. He's been in my life ever since. When I was really young, we went to my grandmother's house. Uncle Herb also lived there. We didn't see much of Bubby Diamond because we were playing with Uncle Herb. When I was a kid, well, his whole life he had a boat, but when I was a kid, he bought a 22-foot double-ender, it's called. It bobbed like a cork on the bay. I suffered from motion sickness. I also suffered from the humor of Charlie and Herb, those brothers. One time, Charlie, that's my dad, and Herb tied a rope around my waist and threw me overboard. When I was between jobs, not that terribly long ago, Herb told me he needed help to drywall and paint the shore house. So I went down every week to work with him. He never mentioned that I needed the money, but told me that I was helping him. My daughter Nancy wrote, "My Uncle Herb was a generous, hilarious man who gave my dad a relentless hard time in a way that was pure love. Every year we would go to the cemetery over the high holidays, and he and my Aunt Lavetta would walk us around and tell us stories about the family that was gone before I was born. Not just the nice stories, the real stuff, the juicy stuff. And then he took us to a fantastic Chinese restaurant, and we ordered so much food it was served on an enormous Lazy Susan. Usually he came to our house, but every so often we'd go to his farm, which sometimes had rabbits or pheasants or geese or goats or a pony, or always an adventure and always some good food inside. He played softball in an over 70 league, which I tried to make fun of him about, but I couldn't because he always made the jokes first. Thank you, Nancy, and there are so many others with their stories of Uncle Herb, Herbie, Pop. After the love of his life, Mary, died, he and I talked a lot about grief and keeping busy, as my wife was diagnosed with terminal cancer. After Karen passed, we spoke every week. He was my grief counselor. He was my uncle. He was my friend. His life was a blessing, and I will miss him.
Shakara. Bob?
Good morning, everyone. My wife Bernadette wanted me to say a few words. Herb was a good friend of mine. I knew him for the last 27 plus years. We had a lot of fun together. I had bought some houses. He had bought a house down the shore. We did work on both of those and a few others, and he just loved being down there with me in the dirt, fixing the electric. I had a house in Burlington where the basement ceiling was about that high, that was much room, and I'd be walking like this, and he'd be standing up, walking around, saying, "Hey, what's up, Bob? What are you doing?" I had to crack up at that. It was funny. I'll just tell a few cute little stories. So Bernadette wanted to go see Billy Ray Cyrus in Atlantic City. So him and I said, "Come on, let's go down there and get the tickets." Well, he had his galoshes on and his Elmer Fudd hat, and I had my dirty clothes on from working, I said, "Come on, let's go." So we're walking through the casino, and I'm saying to myself after we got out of there, I said, "Herb, just imagine those security guards looking at the two of us going across this casino floor, knowing we're not going to bet a penny because he didn't gamble." I would have stopped, but I didn't. Bernadette would cook dinners when we lived in Burlington. And I'd call him up. I'd say, "Come on over, come on over, you and Mom. Come on over. We're gonna have a turkey dinner." Okay. By the time when I hung up the phone, there was a knock at the door. It was Herb. He came from Mount Laurel. I'm kidding. It was he was that hungry, or he loved coming to dinner. That's for sure. Bernadette loved cooking for him. One other thing, a construction job. He had a construction job before he went to U.S. Pipe, and he told me that he liked the job in construction, but he never knew where his lunch was. His lunch was over here, over there, over there. U.S. Pipe, it was in a locker. 47 years later, he left, or retired, rather. But that's about it. He was a good friend of mine. I loved him dearly. I loved him like my dad. And I'm going to miss him tremendously, and so is my wife. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Rabbi Nathan, in preparation, told me we should have every word written down because when you get up here, you're not going to remember any of the things that you want to say. And that's it's against my nature. I can't plan ahead that far. But one of the things that I do know is that my pop's favorite color was tan. He did not derive joy from material things. He derived joy from the relationships that he had with every person in this room. I think half the South Jersey Senior Softball League is here. It's just testament to the people, even outside of his family, that he just naturally had a way to draw people because he was a very loving person. Some of my best friends are here. They got to know my pop from the time he was a kid. I mean, they were kids. That they would be like 120 or something if it was from the time they were kids. My pop took very, very good care of our family, and especially my nan. After she had the stroke, he took the weight of the world on his shoulder, and he carried that for 7 years. And I hope to take care of Kate one day if she needs me to take care of her the way that my pop took care of Nanny. He was just such a sweet man. And another thing was that, like I said, he didn't get joy from material things. His whole life he had wanted a Cadillac. So he bought one that was like 30 or 40 years old. He spruced it up a little bit, and he's like, yeah, man, I got a Caddy. That's right. Took me a long time to get this, but I got it. I mean, I think case in point, he's not the kind of guy to have a flashy casket. He picked a very basic wooden one, and he told me that was intentional, and it's because he just wasn't that kind of a guy. He wanted to have something very herby-derby in nature. Love my pop very dearly. As my brother, I'm sure, will allude to the moderation thing that he told him. I don't think I slept for the first 2 or 3 days after we held Pop as he passed in his own living room. And I think I'm all dried out from tears. Right now I'm kind of in the numb stage of mourning. But obviously I'm here for anybody in our family that needs that, because my family's there for me too. We all love Pop dearly, and today, if we could just stay as positive as possible in celebrating his life as opposed to it being a mournful day, I know that that's exactly what he would want, was for us to celebrate all the memories of him and to just have a smile on our faces as we lay him to rest to be with Nan.
Hey, I just wanted to thank everyone for coming. I really appreciate it. Pop was one of my best friends. He taught me a lot about moderation, and he taught me a lot about how to take things as they come, and he was the least judgmental person I've ever met in my life. He always took people at face value, and he did a tremendous job at taking care of his family up until the very end. He took care of me in my worst times, and he never asked for a thing. Pop was one of the most honorable people I've ever met in my life, and I'm going to miss him dearly. Thank you.
It's with these loving memories and dedications in mind that we move to El Malei Rachamim, the central prayer of a Jewish memorial service that asks that as his soul departs from body, that it be granted true rest on the wings of God's divine presence. I'll read it first in the English, followed by chanting in the Hebrew. If it's physically comfortable for you to do so, I invite you to please rise. O God, full of compassion, who dwells on high, grant true rest upon the wings of the divine presence in the exalted spheres of the holy and pure, who shine as a resplendence of the firmament to the soul of Herbert S. Diamond, who has gone to his eternal home. For charity has been donated in remembrance of his soul. May his place of rest be in the Garden of Eden. Therefore, may the All-Merciful One shelter him with the cover of God's wings forever, and bind his soul in the bond of life. The Lord is his heritage. May he rest in his resting place in peace, and let us say, Amen. El male rachamim, shochen bamromim, hamitzei menucha nechona, al kanfei hashchina, b'malot kidoshim utehorim, kezohar harakia mazhirim, et nishmat Heschel ben Yosef, shehalach le'olamo, ba'avor shenadvu tzadaka, ba'ad hazkarat nishmato, began eden dehe menuchato, lachen bal harachamim yasti rehu beseter kenafav le'olamim, v'yitzror b'yitzror hachayim et nishmato, Adonai hu nachalato, v'yanuach al mishkavo b'shalom, Vinomar, Amen. Please be seated. Our formal time together here at the chapel is drawing to a close. Immediately following, we will be making way in processional to Mount Sharon Cemetery in Springfield, Pennsylvania. The family asks that donations in lieu of flowers please be made to the South Jersey Senior Softball League, about which he cared so much. And following interment, friends and family guests are welcome to join for visits of consolation at Carlucci's waterfront in the Rancocas area of Mount Laurel.
And if we could have the pallbearers to the center aisle. And we ask we could all rise once again. Everyone, I'm going to ask if we can remain where we are. I'm going to dismiss everyone row by row.